Welcome to the Friends with Money podcast, brought to you by Money Magazine, creating financial freedom for Australians since 1999. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are general in nature, and further independent advice and research based on your personal circumstances should be sought before making an investment decision.
Henry, Pinto and Cade Franklin were the first ever winners of the Lego Masters Australia TV series. The show was a big ratings hit and was also the beginning of a beautiful friendship for the winners, who have since gone on to release a book together, The Thrilling Adventures of Brick Dad, filled with dad jokes and illustrated with their own Lego builds. I had the privilege of talking to Henry and Cade for Friends with Money just after the launch of their book. Cade and Henry, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. Can you please tell me a bit about yourselves, how you became Brick Dads, how you met, what your connection was before the show?
Well, do you mind if I tell the story, Cade? Because I think we actually didn't know each other at all before the show. So we were paired up on the show and we were both just very passionate Lego dads. And we actually just met probably on the first day, right before filming. But we found very quickly that we had a lot of Lego chemistry and we hit it off straight away.
And what brought you both to the show? What had you done to lead up to that point where you both became contestants?
So for me, I've loved Lego my entire life. I've kind of never really put it down. I'm kind of a big kid at heart. I make video games for a living, so like I've always been about play and having fun. Prior to the show, I'd helped a friend of mine build a life-size Lego caravan, which won the Guinness Book of Records for the largest Lego caravan. Who would have thought that was a category? But there you go. It has since been beaten, but that was me. That's kind of a bit of backstory there.
I was actually drawn into it by my kids. So I was always into it as a child, but I probably forgot about it when I was a teenager. They call that the dark ages in Lego terminology. So when my older son was around 5 or 6, organically starts bringing home Lego, and then my interest was instantly rekindled, and just fell in love with Lego all over again.
And do you both let the kids actually play with the Lego?
No, we actually have separate Lego that they're not allowed to touch. There's their Lego and my Lego, and they know which one's off bounds.
So can I ask you, what was your first job, Henry?
Oh, my first job was a landscaper. I was actually a landscaper straight out of high school, worked with a friend, wasn't a landscaper for very long. And then I was a waiter, and I would probably call that my proper first job. And
what about you, Cade?
Yeah, so for me, my first job was as a Christmas casual at Kmart, working the cash registers. Which slowly eventually led to me working in the cash office doing all their books.
So not in the toy department?
Oh, I was often found in the toy department. I don't know if that counts.
Spending your earnings. Did you ever think that Lego was going to make you money at some point?
For me, I actually think so. Like, part of me, like, that has been a big driver for me. I never knew how it would. Like, that was always a bit of an unknown, but it was something that I've always kind of followed my interests and my passions. So I think it wasn't such a surprise to me. Like, when I heard about the show, Lego Masters, that there was a show where you can go and make stuff out of Lego, I knew that I had to be part of that. That was something that I just had to do, and so it was very natural for me to kind of do that. So for me, in a weird way, yes.
I would say that mine was totally the opposite. I had a very strict traditional upbringing. My mum my parents both wanted me to be either a doctor or a lawyer, typical sort of, stereotype, that sort of environment. I was even hesitant to tell my mum as a 37-year-old grown up that I was going on a TV show, because I instantly knew I would be judged. And I remember her, when I did tell her, saying, "Oh, you're going to lose your job, Henry. I cannot believe you're gambling with your children's life, and the life you set up for yourself. I cannot believe you're gambling with it. You are going to lose your job." all that sort of thing.
I think our mums must be related.
Yeah.
And so when you went on the show, were you amazed at the popularity of Lego, or did you guys actually just know?
It was funny. I remember being so excited about what we did on the show, and it takes 6 months before it actually you get to share that with everyone, because it takes that long to go through production.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were really excited and hoping that everything that we felt on the show and experience would come across to an audience. And then, when the show hit and it was huge, we were like, it was like a sigh of relief, as you're like, people get it. Like, people get our hobby and they're loving it. So there was, obviously we loved it. We were very excited about it. But it was a surprise and not a surprise at the same time about, obviously how popular it was.
Yeah, incredible audiences. What, 1 million per episode, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first season was smashing it. Yeah.
And did you feel that there was a pressure that you both got on and became a team and, worked together?
Yeah, I think initially having a friendship to, I guess, in a way protect, really allowed us to just be almost professionals in the setting and just be like, okay, let's just create the best Lego models that we can do. We've got nothing to lose. And we went into it with that mindset, and I think we succeeded.
Fantastic. So what's the best money advice that you've each received?
For me, it was my parents, again, being very traditional. They always said, as soon as you can, buy a house as soon as you can. And I was quite young when I did that endeavor, young compared to these standards. And I think I was 23 when I bought my house. And that was probably the best advice that I ever got, because I actually saw a lot of my friends that, jumped into that endeavor later in life, go, oh, I'm priced out. I can't do this. I can't do that. So it was probably a really good decision advice on my parents' part.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I think it was like, use your own money, like avoid credit cards was kind of the thing. And so, growing up, I never had a credit card till a lot later in life. I do have one now. But I think that actually kind of helped me kind of, work out my means and like, if I want something, what do I actually need to do to get it?
Yeah, good lessons. So what's the best investment decision you've ever made?
Oh, for me, it was probably not a physical investment into anything. It was probably just investing in myself when I was young. Like, I invested in a lot of life experiences when I was young, and I did a lot of things that I guess were a little bit out of the box that not everyone did when they were young. And I think it just taught me a lot of life lessons, and it sort of it helps me in my adult life having those experiences.
So what sort of things did you do?
Oh, I did some crazy things where I actually, again, against my parents' will, I actually took up becoming an amateur kickboxer and doing things that nobody would think, oh, why would you do that? And I actually ended up being really good at it. But again, my parents would constantly say to me, how is this going to make you money? Why are you doing this and things like that? And and traveling and all that sort of thing. So, I just went through money when I was in my teenage years and like sort of my early 20s, but I think that they were investments in my life experience.
And for me, I think there's kind of it's two different things for me. The first one is when I first got really back into Lego I was in my starting out in uni, I would import Lego from overseas and sell it on eBay. This is like 20 years ago. And I actually accumulated enough Lego that it became an asset for me to then purchase my first property.
How much Lego do you have to have for that?
Quite a bit. It kind of, yeah. It's funny because this is something that I guess some people know, but like some Lego accumulates in value, becomes a collector's item and becomes quite desirable. And this is my second best investment was, as an example, I bought a Lego set at David Jones for $200 and ended up selling it for $5,000. I think it was about 5 years later, but even so, that's a pretty good turnout
For that. Amazing. And
yeah,
where do you store all this Lego that you used as your down payment for your house?
It's funny because my wife and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and thankfully there was lots of storage like in the cupboards, and so like it was basically you'd open the cupboard and it was a wall of Lego boxes and Lego, and that's really the limiting factor on that type of investment is like actually physical space.
Do you buy it as an investor that you know that you're going to sell certain pieces?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I think it's kind of, things have changed a lot. Like, I was doing that to an extreme 20 years ago, but I think it's a little bit harder now. But certain sets, you know, will be popular, or you kind of take a punt that they will be popular. There's kind of a bit of speculation, I guess. And, you know, the way I look at it is, if it ends up being collectible, you know, that's a good thing. But if it doesn't, you end up with a whole heap of Lego, which is awesome. That works for me.
So is it buying with your head or buying with your heart in this situation?
I think it's a bit of both. And for me, I think that's the kind of the fun thing about Lego is like, if I love it, that's actually one of the reasons why it actually ends up having value. Like, people do love these sets and there's a nostalgia to things. And I think that's actually one of the things that I find appealing on that level.
So what's the worst investment decision you've made, or the worst investment?
That's a good question. I can't remember.
For me, the first time I actually started to, I guess, earn what you would call adult money, I would collect old toys, like vintage toys, and I was the worst thing I ever did, because I was never one of those people that could keep things pristine, and I would constantly just open the box and start playing with it. The kids would get their hands on it and they would just break. So
yeah. Whatever. A bit like a Seinfeld episode.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, you know, it's not really an investment in money, but I think as a game designer and a game developer, I've spent a lot of time over the years playing video games, and I'd say that that's probably a poor investment in terms of like what I could be doing with my time.
I don't know, that could be a good investment if that's what you've ended up working in.
It's true. I feel like sometimes that's just an excuse.
So what are your favourite things to splurge on?
Well, that's pretty obvious,
very
isn't
obvious. That's very obvious. Lego.
Yeah. So
how much do you both have at the moment?
I've probably got about 200,000 pieces of Lego that I, you know, at my disposal at any given time. I've actually renovated my house to accommodate a Lego room, so that's probably gives you an idea, Julia, how much Lego I have.
And the kids are not allowed to play with your Lego?
No, not at all.
Well, they know they're not allowed to, but it doesn't stop them. I think that's the problem in our household. I think in terms of how much I have, I would say that I probably have not enough, whereas my wife would say that I have more than enough.
So if you had $10,000 today, where would you invest it?
Easy one for me. Like I would buy some Lego. Like I was saying before, if it didn't end up becoming collectible and worth more, I would end up with $10,000 worth of awesome Lego.
I guess my answer is a little bit more traditional. I definitely looking out for my kids' education. I've got 3 boys, and so I'd probably invest it somewhere where I could see the money grow towards an education for them.
Fair enough. And what would you do if you only had $50 left in the bank?
Well, that, for me, there's definitely been a mistake. I would call the bank. There's no way there'd be only $50 left in my bank account.
Yeah, for me, I think I would head down to the coffee shop. I'd spend $5 on a coffee, and I'd be coming up with a plan on how to turn things around.
Fantastic. Do you both intend to leave inheritances?
I do.
Yeah, I'm the same. I absolutely think. I think all the kids, I guess from my generation's people having children, definitely need it, and all the help they can get. So I'll definitely be leaving an inheritance. And
have you made special bequests for your Lego?
Yes, mine has one instruction: Cade cannot have it.
Yeah, you can only play with it after you're 18. Like no grubby Vegemite fingers on any of the pieces.
Do you think you'd like to see any changes with the way that people consider money post-COVID?
I think definitely, but I think it's not even post-COVID. I'm a big believer that kids need to be taught the basic fundamentals of finance. Even how a mortgage works, how interest works, all those sort of things. I think it's almost a subject that could be taught in primary school, and then leading into high school. I really think that especially with products like Afterpay and all that sort of stuff. I think people actually need to understand. Young people need to understand how it all works.
Yeah, I agree with Henry. I think that's all. Yeah, nothing to add. Nothing to add.
And can you each please finish the sentence? Money makes ...
Money makes money. I think, that's classic, but I believe that's true.
Yeah.
I would say money makes you happy, but only knowledge can make you content.
Fantastic. Now, I want to ask about your book. How did you come up with the book? How did you work on it together when you're in different cities?
Well, the book probably came out of the fact that we weren't going to be really good ambassadors for skincare products on Instagram or anything like that. So we had to come up with something that would probably be more of a bit of it would be a good transition to.
I think it's funny because obviously we live now in a post-COVID world, but we actually started this book and made it just prior. And because Henry and I live in different states, it was a way that we could continue doing what we loved doing, telling stories and jokes through Lego that we started on Lego Masters. And it kind of gave us an outlet to kind of do that remotely, but still be kind of working together on a project. And I really think, it was great to be able to kind of bounce Lego jokes off each other. We're both dads. We had heaps of content in terms of silly stories that, everyone can relate to with their families. So it was really born out of that and wanting to continue doing stuff after Lego Masters.
And who is the book aimed at?
For me, I think the book is aimed at anyone who has been, in a family. It's for kids, it's for parents, it's for people who want to have a laugh, and obviously people who love Lego.
And how hard was it to do the book? How long did it take? What was the process?
So Kade and I, neither of us are actually professional photographers or artists or anything like that. But I know that from our experience on the show, we both could tell that we had a keen eye of how to present something. So we actually both learnt photography for the book. So that was a fun experience unto itself, because it's probably something that really pushed us out of our comfort zones. And we actually had to just learn how to do photography, and then not only learn photography, but then understand how to present it in a way that it could be easily consumed by an audience, and and actually be funny, obviously.
Actually, can you describe for people listening how the book is presented, what it is, in fact?
So when we were coming up with the idea of how we could do a book, because the original, I guess the genesis of the book was, what's the idea behind a book? We want to do a book, but what could we do a book about? Neither of us are interesting enough to do a biography or anything like that, but we definitely knew that there was something that, and we didn't want to do an instruction book either. We didn't, a lot of people, when we tell them that we've done a book, actually say, oh, is it an instruction book? And I think that's the anti-Lego Masters. We don't want to do instructions. We want you to do, be creative and, come up with things yourself. And so we just knew that we were dads, and it was always, funny talking about our own dad experiences. But then, I think knowing that we knew how to tell stories with minifigures, we basically said, if we create this universe where Kade and I are the stars of the show, we're front and center, and we're the dads in the story, but we're made out of Lego, what would it look like? And then that organically became really, really interesting concept. And so it's all these parenting scenarios, but the punchline is Lego. And there's always like Lego. We call Lego like almost the cameo that comes in and says, "Oh, hi, I'm Lego. This is the punchline of the story."
And in terms of how the book is actually structured, though, it's effectively presented as a comic book structure. So it's presented as like a setup for a gag, and then told through as a comic book. But everything's been built using Lego, and that we deal with things like I don't know. How do you respond to a child asking you about where do babies come from, or like situations of like kids fighting in the car as when you're on a long journey, like how do you deal with that, and how do you deal with that specifically if you are a Lego person in a Lego world. And so the book is a collection of these kind of moments that we have as parents, created in Lego and told as a little comic book gags.
And how long did it take you to produce the book?
It took me longer than Henry.
Let's just say Henry was cracking the whip a little bit, huh? Is that what you're trying to say? No, look, we both worked on it probably for about 2 months solid. Would you say, Cade? About 2 months solid.
I think it ended up being 3 months, but it was intense. It was intense, yeah.
Because we still had our old jobs. We still do have our old jobs, obviously, and it was just learning a new skill, and obviously not being in the same vicinity where we could just instantly bounce things off each other and say, and have the bubble of the show where you could just do whatever, just be creative in that setting. We had to really figure out, how do we work together separately in this different environment.
Well, congratulations to both of you. Well done, and lovely talking to you both today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. That was our award-winning Lego Masters, Henry Pinto and Cade Franklin. Please remember, you can listen to more interviews about people and their money by subscribing to the Friends with Money podcast wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Friends with Money podcast. For credible, independent and easy to understand financial commentary, visit moneymag.com.au.